So tonight, before you even turn to the Bibles, I want to see how many of you feel like you know the story of Noah and the ark pretty well. Okay? Do you think you can tell the story of Noah and the ark? I've seen Evan Almighty. That's helpful. That's helpful. Steve Carell's in that one, right? Yeah, that's good. That's good. Morgan Freeman. I got to tell you guys, I don't think God probably looks like Morgan Freeman, but I wouldn't be like completely shocked, if his voice was somewhat similar. Anyway, all right. Who thinks they know Noah and the ark pretty well? Okay. Somebody tell me one sentence. Think one sentence. We're going to tell this collectively. How does the story start? Who can tell me how it starts? Okay. We're going to start with the animals. Okay. There's some animals. And there how many are there? There's 2 whole animals. This is going to be a real small boat, guys. Okay? Taylor. The world was in corruption. Okay, that's where our story starts. Then what happens? Who can tell me what comes next? In the back, Matthew. A giant boat. Okay, so, boy, we are skipping all over the story. Okay, Parker. Noah was the most righteous man. Okay, what else? Say that one more time, a little louder. God calls out Noah. Okay, so we've got a corrupt world. We've got a guy named Noah. We've got 2 whole animals, a really big boat, and God calls out Noah. What else? Right here in the front, Gabe. He gives the plans for the boat to Noah, which is good, okay, because if you've ever tried to build something without the instructions, you find a lot of leftover parts, right? But God said, hey, do it like this. So that was good. That was good. What else? No one believes him, okay? Got it? So no one believes that this thing is going to happen because this thing is... Did someone say a snake? We're in Genesis 6, not back in Genesis 2, okay? I guess that's 3. All right, so there's going to be a flood, okay? What else, Nala? There it is. She got there in the end. 2 of every kind of animal, which is interesting. Does that mean 2 of every breed? Does that mean... I don't know. It's interesting. We don't have time to... Oh, there's a table there. Who knew? What else? A dove. Okay, there were some birds for sure involved in this story. Peter? There was lots of water. That is true. What else? Are we missing anything important, Nala? Okay, it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. Okay, Peter? There was more water. That part will never be wrong in this story until like the end part. Okay, Taylor? I heard something about cubits, which is an Old Testament, old school way of measuring, so that is true. The rainbow. What about the rainbow? It's a sign of God's promise. I'll never flood the earth again. Give yourselves a round of applause. You guys mostly hit the details. Not bad. Not bad. Some questions to think about. Some questions to think about just as we get ready to dive in. Who closed the door? God. Yeah, God closed the door. How long were they on the boat? No, way longer. We'll get to that. Yeah, it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. We'll get to that. If you have a Bible, join me in Genesis chapter 6. If you don't know what it is, no shame. It's the very first book. So Genesis 6, that's where we're going to be tonight. As you're turning there, I'll show you what I think we typically imagine the ark looks like. Let's take a look at this. This is kind of what we see, right, in our mind's eye, like painted on a nursery or in a children's church area. Like everybody's having a great time. Noah's smiling. He's got a good beard. There's a butterfly here on the ark. I mean, everybody's just happy as they can be. This is probably the world's most inaccurate picture of what the ark would have looked like. Now, have any of you ever been to the Ark Experience in Kentucky? Okay, a couple of you have. Let's show that next picture. Some guys got together and they built what they believe is a pretty close representation of what the ark would have looked like back in the day. They followed the measurements, the cubits, all those things. And so if you actually go to Kentucky, this is called the Ark Experience, so you can go and check this out. You can see this thing is bigger than a football field, right? And there's not room topside the way that last picture showed where all the giraffes can just be out and take a bath in the rain. They would have been stored inside in decks. And so if you want to read more about this, just Google Ark Experience. I think some guys with Answers in Genesis helped put that together. Super, super interesting. This is kind of the boat that we're actually talking about. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to start in Genesis 6, and we're going to read just a few verses to kind of set the stage. Again, we want to understand this story deeper than just the children's Sunday school level. So Genesis 6, starting in verse 5. Says, the Lord observed the extent of human wickedness on the earth, and he saw that everything they thought or imagined was consistently and totally evil. So the Lord was sorry he ever made them and put them on the earth. It broke his heart. And the Lord said, I will wipe this human race I have created from the face of the earth. Yes, and I will destroy every living thing, all the people, the large animals, the small animals that scurry along the ground, and even the birds of the sky. I am sorry I ever made them. So there's a cheery, fun part of the story that maybe you didn't hear so much in Sunday school, right? God looks down and says, yeah, I wish I could have a do-over. Oh, wait, I'm God. I can. I'm going to wipe out everybody. If you tell that to a group of like 4-year-olds, they're going to start crying, and they're going to go home and tell their mom and dad that they read some horrible story in Sunday school. But God looks down, and it says that everything that people do, everything that people imagine is totally and consistently evil. Now, the first point I want to make is this. What does God see when he looks at our world? Think about that for a second. That's the first thing on your handout. What does God see when he looks at our world? Sometimes we can begin to believe that our world is as bad as it's ever been, right? Maybe you get to sitting and talking with somebody like, the world is just terrible and everything's bad and it's gone to hell in a handbasket and it's getting worse every day. You ever hear anything like that? Let me see a show of hands, right? The world's never been as bad as it is now. The next time you hear that, you say, yeah, it has. One time God saw that it was so bad, he just said, I'm going to start over. And he killed everybody except for Noah and his family. So I want you to understand, the world today is not as bad as it's ever been. In fact, if you go read Ecclesiastes, it says there's nothing new under the sun. What has gone around will come back again. Guys, the world that we live in is corrupt and it is evil, and there are a lot of people out there who are doing things that are not glorifying to God. But it's not so bad that there's only one guy in the whole world who still loves God. So take some encouragement from the fact that while our world is corrupt, it's not as bad as what we're seeing here in Genesis chapter 6. Let's keep reading. Verse 8, we'll just read one more verse. Noah found favor with the Lord. Can you imagine if you were the one person in all the world that God found favor with? It says everything is bad, so much so that God, it breaks his heart. That word that it uses for sorry, God's sorry, it means pain in the Hebrew. God is in pain over what he sees in his creation. But there's one man with whom he has found favor, and it's Noah. Keep reading in verse 9. This is the account of Noah and his family. I want you to notice the 3 things that it says about Noah here. It says he was a righteous man, the only blameless person living on earth at the time, and he walked in close fellowship with God. Does this mean Noah never sinned? What does it mean? How could he be righteous if he had sinned? What do you think? He followed God. Noah's righteousness didn't come from Noah. Noah's righteousness came from his relationship with God. And so it says he's the only righteous person in all the earth because he was close to God. It says that he was blameless, meaning that God did not hold him accountable for his sin. We got to believe here that Noah was walking so closely with God that he was asking for forgiveness, that they communed, that they had a strong relationship. And it says that last part, he walked in close fellowship with God. For Noah, God wasn't some distant concept that maybe was kind of vague. God was a very present reality. And so the second question that I would ask you to think about is, what does God see when he looks at my life? What does God see when he looks at my life? See, when he looks at the whole world, he sees it's tore up, it's bad. I'm going to start over. But there's Noah, and I see that in his life, I'm a priority. When God looks at our world today, yes, he sees that it's corrupt, but when he looks at your life specifically, what does he see? We just came out of an 8-week series of experiencing God. Have you experienced God in such a powerful way that it has transformed who you were into now who you are? Have you passed from death to life? Are you a new creation? That's a question only you can answer. And see, it's not enough just to fake it. There were probably some people in Noah's day who were really good at faking it, who looked pretty good out in the public square, but in their heart they were far from God. And the Bible tells us that God doesn't judge by external characteristics or what we as people can view. He says he looks at the heart. He knows what's in our minds. So when God looks at your life, what does he see? It's more than just you putting on a show in front of grandma or acting kind of nice because it's church Sunday. God sees you every moment of every day. What are your motivations? What are your thoughts? What's going on below the surface in your life that's informing your actions? For Noah, he was close to God. Now, I'm not going to read all of the next part of this to you, but if you keep going down, verses 11 really through 21 describe what's going to happen. God shows up and tells Noah, hey, things are bad. I'm going to wipe out everybody. But, well, hold on, Noah. It's okay. I'm going to save you. I'm going to save your family. So you, your wife, your 3 sons, and their wives, I'm going to save them. And you're going to build this boat. And he begins to describe to him all the dimensions, 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, 45 feet high. And he says, I'm going to cover the earth with a flood and destroy everything. And this is where he tells them, bring a pair of all the animals so that you guys can repopulate when it's all said and done. Take enough food on board. Boy, that would have been rough to forget the food, right? And I love verse 22. If you're a Bible highlighter, underliner, I start it in mine. Verse 22 says, Noah did exactly as God commanded him. Man, what a testament to his relationship with God. Noah got these crazy instructions. Imagine that God shows up and tells you, hey, I'm going to kill everybody in the world except you and your family. Build this boat. You are the future of humanity. I'd probably freak out. I'm just going to be real. But Noah does everything that God commands him. He begins to work on this boat. He begins to make it a priority. He begins to follow God in this. Now, I'm going to ask you to think about something. Don't answer this out. How does this story jive with this picture of God as love? If we're going to say God is love, how can we look at this story and say, yeah, I see the love of God in that. God wiping out all of humanity. Because there are people who are not Christ followers who, when they think about the Old Testament God, they'll say, there's not a lot of love there. How do you reconcile? God is love, but also he has wiped out everyone. I would tell you sometimes the most loving thing that can happen is to be punished, right? I've used this example before. When you were young, if you sprinted out into traffic and your parents did not bring you back and punish you in some way, taking away a lollipop, a spanking, whatever that looks like in your life, you don't learn. And you just continue to run out in traffic until one day you're struck by a vehicle. Sometimes the most loving thing is punishment, is discipline. And the writer of Hebrews says no discipline is enjoyable while it's happening, but it's for our benefit. Do we believe that God is working all things together for our good and for his glory? If we're going to say that God is love, we have to believe that. And that is your first handout under God is love. He is love. Let's look at that verse that we've got out there beside it. 1 John 4:8 says, anyone who does not love does not know God, for God is love. So if you are not living a life marked by love, I would tell you maybe you don't fully grasp who God is. It's impossible to love God and hate your brother or your sister. God is love, and that's true. But it can be hard to look at that and then reconcile it to this story. And that's because, number 2, God is also just. God is also just. What does that mean? God is just. Does anybody know? Anybody want to take a guess? He's fair. Okay, what else? See, these are the church concepts. You're like, yeah, God is just. But what does that mean? It means God is holy, and he's always going to do what is right. You don't ever have to doubt that. You don't ever have to question his motivation. You don't ever have to wonder, is God going to come through? He is just. And this part's not as fun to talk about as, well, God's love and Jesus is love, and he says to go and to love people. Yes, but sin must be punished. And I don't want you to take away from this hellfire and brimstone and flood and death and destruction, but sin has a price. And the good news is Jesus paid that price in our place. But there must always be payment when there's sin. God is just. Look at this from Psalm 9, verses 7 and 8. The Lord reigns forever, executing judgment from his throne. He will judge the world with justice and rule the nations with fairness. Guys, God is just. And you can trust that he's always going to do what is right. He can't not do that. It would deny his very character. God is just. And so he starts over. He hits reset back in Genesis chapter 6. And so you begin to wonder some of what was that like? Noah does all that he's commanded. Look at verse 1 of chapter 7. We've just left off with Noah has done everything exactly as God commanded him. Now we jump into chapter 7. When everything was ready, stop right there. How long did that take? How long? 40 years? That's a good guess. 40 is a strong biblical number. Probably a little longer than that. Yeah, a little longer. We're going to put this chart up on the screen for you. And it gets a little complicated, but I want you to see this. So if you go back into Genesis chapter 6, God begins to speak and says that man's days are numbered. And he gives this number of 120 years. Now, it's not right then that God says, hey, I'm going to send this flood. It's not right then he tells Noah. You see the timeline. Noah starts to have a family. And there's some question marks. We don't know all the answers to all of this. But we know there's enough time for Noah's sons to get married and to have a wife and come onto the ark. And so by the time we get from Genesis 6:3, which is where we get that 120 years, into Genesis 6:18, which is where God tells Noah, hey, build the ark, get started. We're guessing somewhere between 55 and 75 years. Now, it doesn't matter if it's 55 or 75. It does, but just understand this. God said, Noah, I'm going to flood the earth. Build a boat. And then year after year after year goes by. Still no flood. Still building this boat. Like, it would have taken this dude quite a while to build that boat, right? This is not some canoe. This is a huge ship. Do you think Noah ever doubted? Some of y'all say no, some of you say yes. I don't know. I can tell you if it was me, after 20, 30, 40, 50 years, I'd be like, I mean, is this thing going to happen, God? Like, I've been building this boat, and you said that it was going to happen, but everybody keeps making fun of me because I'm building this huge boat, and we live in a desert. And I keep telling them it's going to rain a lot, and they're like, I mean, really? What does that even mean? We don't know that it had ever rained at this point. It might have, but we don't know. And guys, the ground's going to crack open and the water's going to come and everyone's going to die. And they're like, okay, Noah, sure, buddy. Had to be hard to be the one person who's righteous, the one person who's following God. And for years, he's building this boat. And you got to believe he's like, come on, sons, you're the only 3 people in the world who actually you're going to help me because you have to. You're my kids. Right? You guys get that, right? Sometimes your parents are like, you're going to do this. Why? You're my kid. That's what it is. And they're building this boat, and you got to believe these kids are like, seriously, Dad, we've been building this boat for 20 years. Is this ever going to happen? Imagine what people said about Noah. Imagine the times he laid awake at night. You ever had that? You're just laying awake. You're like, man, I don't know about this, God. I got to believe Noah went through that. We tend to read these stories like Noah's this superhuman person who didn't have questions or doubts or feelings or emotions. I'm telling you, I think Noah probably was a lot of times wondering, God, are you going to come through? You said it, but are you going to do it? And what we know is he does. So we get into Genesis 7:1, and they begin to load the boat. God says, get into the boat. I can see you're righteous. And he starts talking about taking the animals. And he tells them in verse 4 of chapter 7, 7 days from now, I'm going to make the rains pour down. and it will rain for 40 days and 40 nights until I've wiped from the earth all living things that I've created. And don't miss this, verse 5. Noah did everything as the Lord commanded. So they get on the boat, and it begins to rain, and the water's coming down. Do you think the people at this point, after it rains for a day or two, are like, you know what? This isn't normal. Maybe that Noah guy was onto something. You know, there's been a lot of Hollywood depictions of this, but I got to believe people gathered around that boat and were screaming, please, please let us in. I've got children. Please save us. Imagine the toll that would have taken on Noah and his family to hear the shouts of the people as the waters began to rise, as the destruction began to pile up. Guys, everybody he had ever known is dying. And again, we read this story and we're like, yeah, I mean, that's just what happened. And Noah, it didn't take a toll on him. He loved God. Man, you can love God and things take a toll on you mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And not only that, dude winds up being on this boat for quite a while. Now, I asked you before, how long were they on the boat? Well, it rains for 40 days and nights. But if you keep tracking through this story, what we eventually find out is they're on this boat for 377 days. Over a year. Can you imagine what it smelled like on that boat? Like, where did all the poop go? You ever think about that? Seriously, animals poop. Like, this is the human side of this story. I mean, yeah, I guess they could shovel it and throw it overboard, but like, there's a fun job, right? You're literally cleaning up the poop of all the animals in the world, which, to be fair, is only 2 of each at this point. But like, it's a lot of work, and it probably smelled inside that boat. What do you think it smelled like outside the boat? Oh, yeah, probably wet and mildewy, because probably you've got to believe there's corpses. Yeah, you never thought about that part, did you? Again, you don't hear this in Sunday school. Yeah, and then all the bodies floated by the ark. Kids are running, and they're never coming back. That's the reality of this story. It smelled in the boat, it smelled outside the boat, and if you go outside to the top part and stick your head out, you get rained on. Do you think maybe they went a little stir crazy? Do you ever go stir crazy? On these days where it's cold and wet and rainy and you've been inside for like 5 hours, you're like, this is the worst. This dude and his family were on this boat for a year. I'm sure they probably made up all kinds of crazy games. Probably they were telling the same stories over and over and over. It had to be difficult to be cooped up, to be pent up. Any of you get seasonal affective disorder? Anybody? Like, when it's gray and gloomy and it just kind of gets to you and makes you feel down? I mean, try being on this boat, right? 40 days and 40 nights of pouring down rain. And then you're like, okay, cool. But then you've got another year of just, like, what now? When's the water going to go down? What happens next? Man, this is not a story that's all sunshine and rainbows, although there is one at the end. This is a story with a lot of emotion. I got to believe that at some point, the people on this boat began to crack and lose it a little bit. But in the end, God is faithful. The waters recede, and they get off this boat, and he says, go, be fruitful, and multiply. And he hangs the rainbow across the sky. And scientists will tell you today all the science behind a rainbow and the light that refracts and why it is what it is. And that's true. But why the rainbow is there is because God said, I'm going to show you this sign for all of time that I will never do what I've done again. This is a reminder. When you see it, you'll know. When I see it, I'll know. God is faithful. That's the last fill-in on your handout. God is faithful. Guys, if God has said it, it will come to pass. I think that's something we can take away from this story. God said, I'm going to start over. He did. Noah, I'm going to save you. He did. Noah, I'm not going to forget you as the months pass, as your sanity begins to wear thin on this boat with the poop and your kids. And I see you, and one day you will be set free. God is faithful. And that's true in our life. How many of you were in big church this morning? You heard Josh talk about the promises of God, how there are thousands of promises in the Bible, and God is faithful to keep every single one of them. Check this out in Deuteronomy chapter 7. Verse 9, understand therefore that the Lord your God is indeed God. He is faithful God who keeps his covenant for 1,000 generations and lavishes his unfailing love on those who love him and obey his commands. He's faithful for 1,000 generations. Hebrews 13:8 says Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. So the promises that we have in Jesus in the gospel are still true for us today. They weren't just for Peter and Paul, they're for us. God is love, he is just, and he is faithful. I think you see all three of those things in the gospel. God so loved the world, right? That he gave his one and only son. And Jesus hung on that cross, and he took our penalty. God is just. There's a price that must be paid. Hebrews says, without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness. And Jesus shed his blood. But God is faithful. He didn't leave his son in the grave 3 days later. He got up. He conquered death and sin so that we could experience true life. Maybe it's easy for you to believe that God is love, but you struggle with the fact that God is just. And maybe you wonder, is God faithful? Does he see me? Will he come through in the way that he says he will? My hope is you'll take away from this story of Noah and the ark that God is faithful. It's not just a children's story. It's not just a boat and it's all cute. Man, this was a difficult situation. And maybe you're going through a difficult situation. Maybe it's not, wiping out humanity level, but maybe for you it feels heavy. Maybe it feels like there's no end in sight. Nobody gets me. I'm all alone. And what I want you to hear me say is God sees you. He knows what you're going through and he loves you. You are not alone. God loves you. If you want to study about God's love, go read in Romans 8 how Paul says nothing can stop God from loving us. And he's always for us, not against us. He is on our side. He is faithful to the end. I hope this has been something that'll help you. When you start to read some of these stories, we're going to continue to look at them in the next couple weeks, but I hope that as you're reading in your Bible, you'll dig a little deeper. Don't just accept, oh yeah, I've always heard that story. Read it for what it is. See what's really going on, and maybe God will begin to reveal something to you in a fresh way. All right, I'm going to pray, and we're going to go to small group and talk about it. Lord, we pray that you would help us to understand you are faithful. You will always come through. What you have said you will do, God, you will. God, we thank you for the story of Noah and the ark, and God, we understand it's not just a cheery children's story. God, this is heavy stuff, but you are a God who can handle these heavy situations. And God, even in the midst of a world that seems so corrupt, God, you see those who love you. You are faithful to save them, just as you saved Noah. God, I pray that every student, every adult in this room would take heart and know that you are sovereign and that you rule and reign over us, that what you have said will come to pass will, in fact, happen. Give us trust on the days that we struggle. God, when the things of life pile up against us, I pray we run to you instead of to the things of this world. God, I pray that you would help us to trust you more, to lean into your love, and just trust, God, that you're on our side. We love you. I pray that you would just be with us as we go to small group. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.